The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. We finally got an Austin FC match after a 2-week break. It didn't quite go the way we wanted, but Austin still locked in second place. So we'll talk about the Wild West decision day, Austin's potential playoff opponents, Austin's MLS superlatives that came out in extra time today, and then a few other pieces of Austin FC news. My name's Landon Cottom, and I'm joined not by Mr. Continental Breakfast Jeremiah Bentley, but instead by Kevin Morris. Kevin, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here, and I can't wait to spend 3 hours talking about the Vancouver loss.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, we're not going to spend 3 hours on the Vancouver loss. It's honestly a game that doesn't mean much. We will talk about it. I think there's some things to learn from it and take away from it. We will talk about it, but there's some cool takeaways from that and also some other interesting news. So I know from historical data that fewer people listen when we lose. So if you've made it this far in, stay tuned because I think we have some cool stuff to talk about aside from that loss. So it's some pieces of Austin FC news that came out this week. The Austin FC Sambas. So Kevin, first question, are you an Adidas guy? And second question, did you order a pair of these Sambas?
I'm not an anything guy, and I did not order any Sambas. It's not because they don't look good. It's just because I feel like I'm not going to play the game with Austin FC merchandise. You know, I know what they're trying to do. I know that they want me to spend money every week on their amazing merchandise, and I'm just not going to do it. They can't get me.
Yeah, I've had to force myself to be pretty picky with the things that I buy, but over the last couple of years, I found out that Adidas shoes fit my weird big feet really well, but B, that I also really like Adidas shoes. And if they had been like a special release price at like 120, 150 bucks, I would not have ordered these, but they're like the same price as a normal pair of Sambas. I'm struggling with where I'm going to wear them though, because they are like special. Like I almost don't want to wear them to a game, but then also where else am I going to wear Austin FC shoes? So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll just bite the bullet and make them stomping around town shoes and actually wear them to a game.
Or just wear them to like an indoor soccer game.
I'm not going to play in them. I have my fashion Adidas and my field Adidas, and these are definitely not field Adidas. All right, some other news that happened this week is Austin FC, I guess the end of last week, Austin FC playoff tickets went on sale on Friday. So there's no date for the game. There's no time for the game, but these tickets still sold out in a matter of minutes. I guess it's not really all that surprising given the market for tickets, because if folks know that if they're unable to go to the game for whatever reason, then they can sell them at a pretty substantial markup.
Yeah, I think, immediately on that news coming out, people were talking on Twitter about how it went, the tickets were going to the resale market instantly for like 300, 400 bucks, whatever. But I think when that happens, that is also still a sign of the popularity of the team.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that shows just how big a deal it is that the resellers will go that aggressively to buy tickets because they know that people are going to buy the tickets. So whether or not the tickets immediately go on sale after on the secondary market doesn't matter. Like if they sell out that quickly, it's a sign that the demand is going to be crazy for this.
Yeah, and like whenever I think I saw maybe a local news outlet report that these tickets disappeared immediately, and I was like, well, yeah, of course they did. But then I think I saw like, I don't know, Stephen Goff or some national soccer writer retweet some news about it selling out immediately. And they acted genuinely impressed. And I was like, oh, this is actually like kind of cool. Like for there to be that much interest in this team right now, just 2 years after we like weren't even sure if this was going to work at all. So I think it does say something about kind of the state of Austin FC's profile in this city.
Yeah, I think it just speaks to what I continue to be impressed by, and I feel like maybe almost I'm starting to take for granted, which is just the incredible fan base for the team. I think it is we feel it and we kind of talk about it as a joke, but it really is something special within MLS.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kevin, did you get a chance to listen to Extra Time today?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it came out like 4 hours ago or something. So I did get a chance to listen to most of it on the way home from work, but they did their Extra Time awards today. And so they ended up picking not just one best 11, because they've learned over the years that they have a hard time picking one best 11. So they end up picking 5 best 11s. So it's more like like being second, third, fourth, fifth team All-American. But some Austin FC players made this list. So Sebastian Driussi was, of course, on the first team. Diego Fagundes made the second team. We had nobody on the third team. But then I was curious when we got to this point if there would be any others. And Brad Stuver ended up on the fourth team, Ruben Gabrielson on the fifth team. I guess the first question is there anybody that you think got snubbed here on the Austin team, or do you think this is a fair set of players for a first 5 11s?
Oh man, snubs. It's hard to say. I don't really think so. I don't think, I think we've had several players who've had really solid seasons, but not necessarily standout seasons. So when you have their solid seasons mixed with the standout seasons of guys like Driussi and Fagundes, it adds up to the incredible season that we've had this year. But no, I wouldn't put them on a best 11 necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, I think this group of 4 though is fair, and that number 3 where that third team where they didn't put anybody. I mean, I got to see their full lists, but I really think that Gabrielson is an underrated center back in the league after this season, especially if they're putting him on that 5th team.
Yeah, whenever I say like I didn't expect there to be more Austin players, it's not because I didn't think these guys didn't deserve it. I just didn't think the Extra Time guys thought they deserved it. But Stuver, like if we were doing a goalkeeper draft, I think Stuver may end up falling to 5th or 6th in that MLS goalkeeper draft. But if you're going to reward guys for having consistently good seasons, Brad Stuver absolutely deserves to be at least in the 4th or 5th team there. And I think Ruben Gabrielson is the same. Like he's been really good this year, pretty consistently, like relatively few mistakes that you can point to and say like that was his fault. But I think I get the sense, and I think for the conversations that you and I have had, you also get the sense that you weren't sure that Extra Time guys or national media people were paying enough attention to notice that Gabrielson was having a really good season, but apparently they were and put him on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how did they choose the teams?
So
were they voting on it?
They were. It was kind of like a consensus thing. So it was just more of like a round table discussion, but they had to. They were essentially choosing formations, like playable formations. None of this 4-2-4 BS that you see in all-star games. Like it was like a formation that a team actually plays, and then they tried to fit an 11 there. And if a player didn't quite fit into that 11, they might get pushed down to the next 11.
I see. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it does show that they watched Austin a little bit more maybe than I expected. But I do think that from what I have seen, to me, Ruben is a top center back in the league. Maybe not top 4, but I think he could compete for a top 6. And we haven't had the best defense in the league this year.
Yeah.
But most of the issues with the defense have not been because of Ruben. For the most part, he is the guy holding things together and scrambling to save our asses when things do go wrong. And along with Stuver too, his distribution out of the back has been really, really good this year. And that is something I don't think that they're really considering in these rankings. Stuver, on that note, man, there were a couple plays early in the season where I was a little bit worried about his passing out of the back again. We had some issues last season where we were pushing to build out of the back, but maybe we shouldn't. His decision making this season has been much better passing out of the back. There have just been fewer issues. He knows when to not take a risk. So fourth is totally fair. But yeah, I mean, I think we should feel very happy and proud of our Stuver.
They also did another pretty long list of superlatives. And so some of the other Austin award mentions through the rest of the show were Josh Wolf came in second in their voting in Coach of the Year.
Who was first?
Wilfred Nancy.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I think that's fair. I think you could argue for Wolf to be first, but I'm not going to fight too hard against that selection. But I think if, like, say, like a guy like Cherundolo had been voted ahead of Wolf, like, I might be a bit more upset about that one, just because of the team that he was handed as he walked into the season, and then it only got better as he went. But I think this is well deserved and something that Josh Wolf and Austin FC should be proud of.
Yeah, I think second is totally fair. I think that I couldn't possibly argue, or let me phrase that a different way. I think that there would be really legitimate arguments against him getting first in that voting, because we're fourth in the Supporter Shield race. It's been an incredible second season for him. But yeah, Montreal has surpassed expectations this year, and have been really, really good. And so have the Union. I mean, Curtin should always be a candidate for this award.
Yeah, agreed. So one of the other, this is a brief mention, but are you familiar with the David Goss theorem, Kevin?
Of course.
Okay, do you want to try to explain it to our listeners?
Basically, foreign signings in MLS, they take time to adapt to the league. So the expectation is in a big foreign signing second season is when they are really going to start performing.
Yeah. Well said. So the winner this year was Daniel Gazdag from Philadelphia Union. But after saying that, he said that Emiliano Rigoni is the preseason favorite for next year's David Goss Theorem Award, which I think that's a really good shout. And I hope to heaven that he's right.
See, Goss is the one that clearly watches Austin FC.
Goss gets it. He knows.
Yeah. He's the one that voted Gabrielson as center back. Now I'm sure of it.
It was Matt Doyle actually brought it up, which was the most surprising.
Oh, really?
Part. Yes.
Oh, Matt Doyle brought up Rigoni? No,
Gabrielson.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, Goss brought up Rigoni for the Goss Award.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. I think we can talk about this later when we talk about the Vancouver game, but every week I feel like I'm seeing Rigoni get better. It's disappointing and a little surprising he hasn't just come flying out of the gates, but you can see incrementally how much he's improving and learning in the system. And we know from watching his tape how talented he is. So we also, we can just kind of imagine as those two things come together, as he really gels in the system and the natural talent begins to show itself as part of that system. Yeah, he could have a really good second season. Yeah, that's the hope. Fingers crossed.
Here's to hoping. So other mentions were Owen Wolf was nominated for Teenager of the Year. I honestly can't remember who won it. I don't think Owen deserves to win it, and I was honestly a little surprised he
Whoever-
made the top 5. But he deserves
Oh, he made top 5.
top 5, yeah.
Okay.
So there's some other guys who have been like major contributors to their team.
Yeah.
I would say Owen Wolff deserves credit for holding his own and being like decent on a team as a recently turned 17-year-old. So no shame in losing that one for sure, but cool to say that he made it. Another one was Executive of the Year. So Claudio Reyna was mentioned, nominated, which brings up a question for me. Like, how do we rate Reyna? Because I think there's arguments for saying he's done a really bad job and arguments for saying he's done a really good job. So looking at our DP hit rate, it's pretty bad, actually. And some other signings that you could say, like if you look at Joe Corona in the expansion draft, if you look at, I mean, even Danny Houston for that rate in the expansion draft on the kind of money that he's on, there's some things that just have not hit. But I think there's some other stuff that you could say that he has hit on, which is like keeping the roster flexible during these like crucial building years to where he can move pieces around, no super big long-term contracts, things like that I think he has done really well. So like how do you balance those things out? Like how do you rate his performance so far?
Man, that is the toughest thing to answer because I just feel like there's a lot that we don't know behind the scenes.
Yeah.
About how Reyna operates, about what directives he's being given by ownership. For instance, I mean, if you're LAFC, it's really easy to sign great DPs because you're just going to pay them whatever, you know? There's no issues. We don't know how much Moneyball basically Reyna is being tasked with playing, right? So it's hard to judge him on that front. So yeah, I mean, LAFC can just go out and sign a guy from Ligue 1 and a guy from La Liga. Boom, done, easy, right? I think with Reyna, the best way to judge him is by maybe not the hit rate of the DPs, because I mean, sure, DPs are a really important part of MLS, but also teams miss on DPs all the time. So I think the most important thing to look at is just how does the overall team play and function, because Reyna is working with Wolff to build a roster of players that play a certain way, and his goal is to maximize Wolff's potential to win on the field. And this season we finished second in the West, and most of the players that we've brought in for the team as a whole have played really well, right? Have functioned well within that unit. And you can even look at like a guy like Fagundes. I mean, I don't know how much of a role Reyna personally played in getting Fagundes here, but I mean, how amazing has he been for us?
I think on Fagundes' account quite a bit. I think he was the one who called Fagundes, wow, at least, and like was very early to reach out whenever it came out that Fagundes' contract was up. So whether or not that was his decision necessarily is, I mean, we'll never know that, but he at least reached out.
Yeah, so you can look at the DPs that we've missed, but first of all, we haven't been scared to clean house with those DPs,
right? Which
is good. And then second of all, you can look at players who we've brought in that have played at almost a DP level. I mean, Fagundes is on extra time best 11 second team, right? Like we just went over that. That's pretty incredible. And then Gabrielson is, like I just claimed, I don't know that many people would agree with me, but I believe it, one of the better center backs in the league. And he's not a DP, but he's been absolutely like a significant part of our run this year and an important part in stabilizing our defense. So, and then you have other players like Ring that obviously sometimes is controversial with fans, but man, he's a really smart dude that plays really well. and is another little part of that engine that is Austin FC. So he's had some misses. I think the way we sign players seems a little bit weird. I'd love for us to not keep signing the same players from the same teams, because that indicates to me, I don't know what it is. Is it laziness or a lack of thoroughness in scouting? It just seems like we should be able to do better than just find dudes that are on the same team. But overall, the team that Reyna and Wolf have built is really, really good. So
yeah, I feel like, I mean, like you said, it's impossible to know. Like, we don't know how much of like these decisions was like clear-eyed foresight, and how much of it is just like getting lucky on some of these things, and how much of it was Wolf's decision versus Reyna's decision. We'll never know any of this. I think one thing we can rate him on is this offseason build, because this team is already really good. There's some pieces who are not necessarily carrying their weight compared to the salary they're making. And like we've talked about many times on this show, this isn't Real Madrid. You can't carry dead weight on your roster. You have to clear that roster space because you only have so much of it. And so not only bringing in players, but moving players out. This is also a skill of a general manager, a sporting director. And so cleaning house where necessary, and then replacing those players smartly and refilling that salary budget in a smart way. I think this offseason is going to say a lot about how good Claudio Reyna is at his job.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this season, second place in the West, a fair bit of luck went into that, but we're a really good team fundamentally. We had some lucky results earlier in the season, some games that went our way when, maybe they wouldn't normally. So the question is, and everybody talks about our just how much our actual goals are outperforming our XG, right? So what that indicates is, maybe a team that could come down back a little bit to earth next year. But at the same time, all of that can also indicate to Reyna where are the holes that can be fixed, right? So we have the potential next season to perform just as well as we did this season, except to do it in a way that relies a little bit less on luck and a little bit more on just overwhelming quality. So can he do that next season? I'll be really interested to find out.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting offseason for sure. All right, let's move on to Decision Day. So it's coming up this Sunday, October 9th. This is the final day of the MLS season. All of the Eastern Conference games will kick off at the exact same time, 1:55 p.m., regardless of what the MLS app or your TV station tells you. It's going to be 1:55. And then all the Western Conference games kick off at 4:18 Central Time. And so there's still one small thing for Austin to play for in this game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the place in the table can't change. They're going to be in second place no matter what. No result can change that. The rest of the West, however, is going to be absolutely crazy. So there's 4 teams who have not clinched a playoff spot or been eliminated, and they all play each other. And so Minnesota, Vancouver play at 4 p.m. They all kick off at the same time, like I just said. But Minnesota plays Vancouver. RSL plays Portland. There's also Nashville and LA Galaxy are still possible to end up in that 7th place spot, but it's less likely than these other 4 teams. The Minnesota, Vancouver, RSL, Portland are the most likely teams to end up in that 7th place spot. So let's just say of those 4, who would be your preferred opponent for Austin FC?
I would have to say, I think Salt Lake. And Minnesota after that. What about you?
I think I would switch them and say Minnesota first, RSL after that, just because, I mean, you look at these other teams, Portland, is surging right now, and Portland is Portland, right? Like they always seem to find a way to turn it on this time of year. They have Dairon Asprilla, who always seems to turn it on this time of year, and they just have these veteran players who just know how to get it done. Vancouver is also on a bit of a surge at the moment. Minnesota and RSL are kind of the opposite. They're in far worse form than they have been at other points in the season. I think the reason I would pick Minnesota is partly because of the loss of Debasi at center back. He was a rock for them all season, had a terrible injury. Sad for him that he's having to miss out. But if we're looking at potential opponents, that is a big reason why I would want to play them, because their defense hasn't been the same since he's been out. They've also been a bit more inconsistent than some of the other teams that are going to be in the playoffs. And so if we catch them on a bad day, I think we could do well against them. Thing that concerns me about them is Emmanuel Reynoso on his day is the best player in the league, but he doesn't always have his day. And so he would scare me. RSL concerns me just kind of because of what they did last year in the first round of the playoffs, where they took 0 shots, right? Not shots on goal, 0 shots, and went to penalties and ended up winning that first round game. And so like, it's the whole X-Dog thing. Like RSL hasn't shown it recently, but I think they still have it in them. And that just kind of scares me a little bit when it's going to be like an effort off. That concerns me with an Austin FC team who wants to have a soccer off and not an effort off.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think the thing with so Minnesota, in playoffs, I always just worry about the talent of a guy like Reynoso.
Yeah,
I think it's totally fair to be concerned about a 0-0 draw. But I don't know, for some reason, just the idea of Reynoso pulling out like a worldie or an amazing play in the last second of the game, something like that worries me more than Salt Lake sitting back and defending for their lives for 90 minutes. Because I can also see us putting in Musa Jite and just absolutely demolishing them again, like we did last time. And I do think with Salt Lake, I think they're missing Krylock and Bobby Wood still too.
correct. Yeah. And then Savarino he was hot for a while and has been a little bit off and missing at times for other games. So I think you're right. Like they don't have as many players or any players that can do that to you, and certainly not to the degree that Reynoso can. So I think that's a completely fair point. Vancouver, I mean, we beat them pretty handily before, but they're surging right now. Ryan Gall is in really good form, so they would. And they've got
Gressel. Gressel came like mid-season, and that's a big deal. Gressel used to be one of the best wingers in the league, and the only reason he wasn't is because he was playing for DC United, and everybody that plays for DC United immediately becomes one of the worst players in the league. So, I think getting Gressel has helped them a lot too. Vancouver, from the game this weekend, I'd rather not play them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think I would take Portland over them too. At LA Galaxy, like I said, it's not likely. Really not like to play them. I don't really want to play Nashville again, just because we've played them so recently and neither of those games have gone very well. But if we do end up facing a team like this, I think I saw you tweet this about Nashville's game over the weekend. But if we do end up facing a team that's likely to bunker and counter in a playoff game, I guess it's 2 different questions. How should Austin approach it, and how will Austin approach it? Will they stick to their guns and try to play the beautiful game, or will they be pragmatic and adapt a little bit?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. They will always play their game. I think it takes a lot of guts to as an attacking team higher in the table to play a low block. It's against the DNA entirely, but it's kind of been our kryptonite this season to play a team like Nashville or Portland that is really, really good on the counterattack. Nashville in particular, that is the entirety of how they are built. Like if you watched the game against Houston, like they have no ideas. If you give them the ball, they don't know what to do with it. They're just like, they just lump it in, hopefully into the box and try to get a header out of the situation. Their entire game plan is to have the other team destabilized because they're pushing high and boot it long to Mukhtar and make something magical happen. And it works all the time because they're really good at it and it's all they practice at. I think fans would hate it if we did that. It would be a hard decision to defend if it didn't go well, like if you lost doing that.
Oh man.
But at the same time, like, you know, it's what Mourinho would have done when Mourinho was, you know, at the top of his game. He would just strangle him to death, playing a low block. And I in the playoffs against a team like that, maybe just try it.
Is there a middle ground? Like, could you see Josh Wolf giving a little bit, or does that not work? Like, I think we saw the US national team try to play like that mid block defense where you're not pressing and you're not bunkering. And it seems like teams just play through that anyway. And so like, is there a way to back off a little bit without completely bunkering, or does that just ruin the system? Like a lot of times it is in transition where we build up, we're in our finishing shape, and every Austin player is pretty high. We lose the ball in an inconvenient area of the field, and we're toast against the team that's that good at breaking. Like, is there a way to change what you do buffering against that, or are you completely relying on the performance and execution of your players?
I don't really think there's the halfway point. I don't think a mid block is the solution. You know, like I don't think the solution is to go halfway between. So yeah, I think the issue is with Austin when we play a little bit high and we get caught out. It tends to be mistakes from like the center backs and often a lack of speed. That's what happened against Vancouver both times in both those goals over the weekend. So there's no tactical solution for that. I think that it's just something that our goal is going to be to outscore the other team and to go all in on that. And that's not going to change. So yeah, I don't think there's a answer. There's not a halfway point.
Yeah, I think one change, it does fall back on what I was saying about just relying on execution and performance, but being more effective in the press against a team like that is something that I think would be helpful for Austin. But it's one of those things, like, it works until it doesn't. And then you have Julio Cascante one-on-one chasing Hani Mukhtar down the field.
So the other way to put it is the goal should be to score early.
Yeah.
That's the halfway. Because if we get an early goal, we are going to force them to chase the game. And we can sit back. It doesn't have to necessarily be that deep. We don't have to completely just give up our principles and positioning. But if we score early and they're chasing the game, they are going to stretch and we can hit them on transition. And we are actually good on transition.
Yeah, whenever we get those opportunities, we're not bad at it. I think like the catch-22 there, though, is if you are, let's say Austin goes out, Josh Wolf tells them, let's push for a goal early. So we're pushing up high, we're going all out to score a goal. Does that not then make us more vulnerable to giving up a goal early?
Yes, it does. And I'm sure the other team's goal is let's get a goal early.
Yeah.
Because then Austin is chasing.
So I don't know what the answer is. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision, but I think you're right that Josh Wolf is always going to do what his game plan is and isn't going to change it for the other team because he never has done that really, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that I was saying Austin still has to play for is CONCACAF Champions League. So I know most of you are thinking like Austin hasn't clinched a place in the CONCACAF Champions League and can't right now, right? It's not entirely true. So with 1 point gained in this game, or with NYCFC losing or even just dropping points in this last game, it will put Austin in a position to maybe qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League without really doing anything. And so there's a few routes that they can do it. So there are 3 MLS teams who have qualified so far. It's the Supporter Shield winner, LAFC. Then another spot goes to the highest team from the other conference that didn't win the Supporter Shield, which is Philadelphia. The U.S. Open Cup winners, which is Orlando. And then the 4th MLS spot goes to MLS Cup winners. And so the routes that Austin has in, the simplest one is to win MLS Cup. As far as simplest to understand, not the easiest to do, but the simplest to understand is to win MLS Cup. They could also have one of those other 3 qualified MLS teams win MLS Cup. And because a team can't qualify to the tournament in 2 different ways, it would then drop down to the next highest ranked team in the league, which with that 1 point or with dropped points by NYCFC, Austin then is that next highest team. And so they could win MLS Cup, have LAFC, Philadelphia, or Orlando win MLS Cup, or if Montreal wins MLS Cup, because this year, I think it changes after this year, and correct me if I'm wrong and you know the answer here, Kevin, because I could be getting this wrong, but Vancouver has already snagged Canada's spot for CCL through the Canadian Cup. And so if Montreal wins, they would get MLS Cup, but would not be able to qualify for CCL by winning MLS Cup. Therefore, it would go to the next highest rated MLS team, which would be Austin FC. I think I got that right.
I'm just going to trust you on that one. But yeah, I mean, definitely the Canada Cup winner gets a CCL spot for sure.
Yeah, which is kind of weird. And I think it's going to change after this year. So the 2024, it will be a little bit different and there will be more opportunity for Canadian teams to win other ways. But this year, Montreal cannot qualify for CCL, even if they win MLS Cup, which Austin would maybe benefit from. So that's still something to look out for as far as like the result from this weekend goes. But other than that, we're in second place and we're going to play the 7th seed. So we'll just kind of be watching those other games and to see who we're actually going to play in that first game. All right. We still need to recap the Vancouver game over the weekend, and then we'll also preview the Colorado Rapids game this weekend. But first, we will take a quick break. Hang tight. We'll be right back with more Moon Tower Soccer. All right, listeners, I texted with Eric Wilson from Sage Wilson Property Group today and confirmed that this last home match will be the last ticket giveaway of the season. And so if you are interested in winning tickets to this game, you can go to moontowersoccer.com, then click on the free ticket giveaway in the top navigation bar, or I also have it linked in the show notes. You can click there, fill out the form, and maybe you will win tickets to that game. Again, this is made possible by Sage Wilson Property Group. So if you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, you should talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Property Group. And as always, Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FVF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC. FVF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. You can go to fvf.law to find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fvf.law. All right, we are back. We're going to preview the Colorado Rapids match, but first we're going to recap the Vancouver match over the weekend. So Austin ended up losing 2-0 to Vancouver. This was a game where Vancouver was playing for their life. I think I said that they needed a miracle last week, and They just about got it. They're probably, I think 538 has them as the highest percentage chance of ending up in 7th place. And so it really is in their hands. If they can win over this weekend, then they're in that 7th spot. So I think because they had so much to fight for and because Austin didn't really have anything else to gain, that's the game we saw, right? Like I think it looked like that on the field.
Yeah, I think it was a game of lost second balls and a game of giving up easy transition moments for Vancouver.
Yeah, there were several chances that Vancouver could have turned in 2 goals that were usually created by a lack of focus, a lack of sharpness, some of which were saved from being goals by Brad Stuver, others by sheer luck, but rarely by Austin actually doing something good to fix it. So Austin's starters were a couple of surprises in here, maybe. So we found out the day before that Ruben Gabrielson was questionable with a hamstring injury. As the lineups come out, we find out that he didn't even make the trip. So Johan Romagna gets the start alongside Cascante. The other surprise is also on the back line with Hector Jimenez starting over Nick Lima. And then we saw Emiliano Rigoni starting on the right wing. And so, Romagna, I think, is the clear choice. Jimenez is one that, like, what do we think about that one? Like, was this a rotation thing? Like, we didn't hear anything about Lima not being fit or being injured. So is Wolf giving Jimenez just one last chance to maybe win that starting right back spot?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think it's needing Jimenez to get back into match fitness after his injury and just giving him minutes for it. I wondered too if part of it is testing how Rigoni plays with Jimenez. I think that when Lima and Finley in that combo, usually what you're seeing is Finley riding the line and making runs in behind, or combining with Ring in like the half space at the top of the box to do, like a give and go pass and get behind the line, or pass it back to Lima, who's hitting those crosses in. But we know that Rigoni really likes to cut in on his left. We signed the guy that is clearly a strength of his. He plays differently than Lima. It would be good for him to try to run in behind the line like Finley does more often. At the same time, why not allow him to, do what he's really good at? So I wonder if the Jimenez start had something to do with enabling Rigoni to do that. And man, he did it a lot in this game and was actually pretty dangerous with it. But we can get into that more a little bit later. But yeah, I think part of it might have just to be to see how he worked with a right back with a different profile than Lima.
Yeah, so with Rigoni starting over Finley here, what I took from this is that Josh Wolf is going to take one or two of these last couple of games and try to get Rigoni into rhythm and feeling comfortable with this team. If we're picking on sheer performance, I think Finley gets the start in this game. But if we're trying to give Rigoni a chance to get up to speed with this team, I think that's why we see him get this start in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Rigoni had a pretty good game, especially in the first half.
Yeah, after watching some clips back, it was a better performance than I kind of thought on first glance, and I think a better one than most people are giving him credit for.
I agree completely. I think Rigoni had a good game and actually created most of our most dangerous opportunities in the first half. I think that there are still some issues with the way he plays overall within the system, and with that kind of combination with the 8, usually Ring, and with the right back. But I counted, I've got 1, 2, 3, four, five, six times in the first half that Rigoni had a dangerous play on the wing, usually ending in a cross that created an opportunity, and good crosses, like good opportunities, not just like hopeful crosses like Nashville playing against the low block. Like these were dangerous crosses.
Yeah,
one's
where the cross like actually created the chance, not just there was an open guy and he found him. It was like a good enough cross to actually like beat a guy or getting the guy into an advantageous position. So yeah, I agree with you there. So Vancouver's first goal comes early in the 7th minute. It's Ryan Gauld. So Thomas Hasal, the goalkeeper, almost gives away the ball in their own box. He gets it out just in time. Austin tries to seize on this opportunity. Everybody steps high. They're trying to pressure Vancouver into giving up the ball. A ball kind of gets chipped over. There's no pressure on the guy who receives the ball, who's able to kind of head it back to the first man on the sideline there. And they chip it over the top to Ryan Gauld. Nobody near him, ends up 1v1 with Stuver. And you're going to expect Ryan Gauld to finish that 10 times out of 10, and he does.
Yeah. So this is such like a season 1 goal to give up to me. We did a lot of things right. The press was great. We almost forced a turnover from the keeper, like you said. And then things just broke down after we got stretched out, and they just hit us in a transition moment and punished us. And I think a couple things stood out. First was not winning that second ball. So basically they kicked it out in kind of a panic, which should be kind of a advantageous thing for us. That's why we're pressing. We're either pressing to get them to, give up the ball and create an opportunity from that, or we're pressing them to just force them to just lob it and have no structure around it. But because our intensity was so low, Vancouver's just winning all the second balls. And then Gauld comes streaking in, and Jimenez, rather than chase the run, decides to do try a really casual offside trap. Like you can actually see him like move a little bit in, and while he's moving up, Gauld just blasts past him. He's onside because Jimenez didn't even really commit to it, and there's nothing after that. So very frustrating goal. What I would say though, compared to some of the goals that we've been giving up in that really bad streak starting with Portland, this was a structural goal, and it's something the team can work on, which makes me feel better about it.
I think that this is also, we talk about on the show sometimes where there's like goals where there's like one guy at fault, and then goals where it's like 10% fault by 6 different guys that adds up to being enough of a chance. And I think if you go back to the first ball that Vancouver controls after, I think Gallagher ends up heading one in behind, they recover the ball. Fagundes is pressed up on a guy, and he's giving the guy space as if he's like trying not to get beat 1v1. But in that moment, like, I think that's not too much of a concern, really. Just like, don't let a guy play a clean pass. And so I think he should have pressed up a little closer on that guy. He allows that ball over the top. Romagna half commits to that first ball and then kind of stops and goes back. And so he doesn't win the first ball. And then as the ball gets played over his head, he's not there to pressure that one either. And so he kind of gets caught in no man's land there. Just kind of a lack of awareness, lack of focus in that moment. Then Cascante, because he's afraid he's going to get beat one-on-one, doesn't pressure one of the balls. And it's just like a few too many of those moments. Like if one guy is able to get a little bit more pressure to one of those balls, it probably breaks down or at least slows it down enough to where Gauld doesn't get in behind. And I think that's one of those things where I think we saw it a lot from like midweek games in congested parts of the season from Austin. And in this year, it's in games like this one that doesn't really mean anything. And so you're not getting that same level of grit and energy from the guys. And I think that that added to this one. I think it adds to the second goal as well. So that one comes in the 62nd minute. Just after an Austin FC miss on goal, Austin get caught out on a switch. So again, Romagna follows Cavallini into midfield. He receives the ball without much pressure. He's able to get a quick switch out to the left-hand side, and Austin's way out of position at this point. And so a through ball finds Gald in behind. He's 1v1 with Cascante. So he just kind of runs past him, gets a ball on the ground in front of goal, and it finds Cavallini, who's able to kind of poke it past Stuver. So it's hard to be too upset with Cascante there for not being fast enough to keep up with Gald. His positioning was okay. He just was never going to catch him. The thing that annoyed me on this goal was Romagna. So he's not able to get enough pressure on Cavallini on that ball into his feet, which there wasn't a lot of like the camera wasn't on it, so I wasn't actually to see what happened before then. He's able to get back. He's running along with Cavallini and is tracking with him. It's not a pace thing. It's not a speed thing there. It's Romagna kind of like turns off for half a second right when Cavallini just makes a run in front of him, and Romagna just doesn't even see it. And whenever Gald plays that ball in, Romagna's looking at the ball and then looks up, and then Cavallini's 2 steps in front of him, and he's one-on-one with Stuver there. And so this is one of the things that like has always been a flaw in Romagna's game. I think if you can get him faced up with a guy who has the ball in front of him and he's focusing on that guy, he's a really, really good defender. If he's focused on one thing and able to kind of put all of his energy into that thing, he's hard to beat. But in these moments when he's off the ball, I just feel like his awareness and focus in those moments let him down time after time after time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's paired with Cascante, who also occasionally has similar moments.
Yeah.
I think it's not a surprise to give up a goal like that from one of them in this game. For Romagna, for both of them, it's really troubling because kind of the most important cerebral part of the game for the center backs is an understanding of space and awareness of where players are. And for Romagna not to do a head check to see who is running behind him in the box on a breakaway opportunity is really disappointing.
What's even worse is that he did do a head check a second before and knew Cavallini was there. He knew he was there and just thought if he kept jogging through the box that he would be okay. And then Cavallini just darts in front of him.
Somehow that's even worse. Yeah. I mean, if you are doing a head check and you're not noticing, you're not too concerned about the guy, and then he ends up scoring, that's not a sign that you are doing a great job of praising the situation.
Yeah, I think that's
it's one way to
a kind way to put it. So Austin ended up with only 5 shots on target. I'd argue that most of our most dangerous shots were not on target or like dangerous opportunities. So we have one early in the 9th minute. There's a really good sequence that ends with Driussi doing like a little no-look slip into Fagundes in the box. It's not a sure goal, but it's a dangerous moment for sure. And Fagundes' shot is just impotent, just very loosely plays it on the ground into the keeper's hands, essentially.
Yeah, so I just want to talk about that for 1 second. It seemed that for everybody on Austin, and this is an example of it, the turf was just eating passes and shots all game. I feel like this was symptomatic of that. Normally that's a shot that Fagundes nails. He doesn't just scuff it. And there were lots of other opportunities in place throughout the game that were very similar to that.
Yeah.
So I think that has to contribute a little bit to our understanding of why everything felt off in that game.
Yeah, so Urruti gets a decent shot off in the 21st minute. A really nice ball from Fagundes over the top, and then Urruti does a good job of using his body to kind of keep the ball his, and gets a shot off. It wasn't a super dangerous shot, but did a really good job of getting it off anyway. And then another time when maybe the turf had something to do with it is 61st minute. Lima makes a really nice move after he comes on to get the ball into the inline, chips it in, finds Driussi, and the ball just it arrives kind of on an awkward bounce anyway. And you'd expect Driussi to get that, to finish that. I would say get on target, but Hasal was on the ground diving towards the near post essentially already. And so I think you'd expect him to finish that, but it just like, I don't know. It sounds like an excuse to say it was the turf, but it also looked like it might've been the turf.
Yeah. It's weird because, they've played on turf and been okay. They did fine against Atlanta. So, but there's different turf surfaces. And maybe there was something about this one. It just seems inarguable to me. If you watch the first time I watched the game, I thought something was up. And the second time I watched the game too, there were just so many things like that where the ball just seemed to behave differently than anybody was expecting it to.
Yeah. And so
it happened a couple times to Rigoni.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about those in a second. Actually, yeah, let's talk about Rigoni now. So, like you said, I think he created a few of the better chances. Well, he finds Urruti's head with a really nice cross, creates another chance with right at the end of the half. He puts a cross in that I think finds Fagundes and he chests it up in the air.
Yeah.
It bounces off Urruti and Driussi gets a shot pretty close in. And Vancouver just does a really nice job of kind of covering the available space with defenders' bodies and it gets blocked. Yeah. But that cross was the one that I was thinking of when what I said earlier, where the cross kind of created the chance. Where it had it been put in many other places, it wouldn't have really amounted to anything.
So this is what's just really interesting about Rigoni, is he is creating danger, and I think adding value, and like we both said, I think had a much better half than people are giving credit for. Even on that play, there was another option there to hit Ring in the little half space. Ring likes to occupy that space when the ball is high. He likes to play in between the left center back and the fullback, right? Like he likes to sit in that spot. And when it's Finley up there, Finley combines really well with Ring in that spot and then the fullback behind him doing overlapping runs.
Yeah, where he might play it inside the Ring and then either run behind or just kind of stay on that back shoulder and hold that defender wide.
Exactly. And so what that does, the reason why like a few weeks ago or whatever, I talked about Finley being like a master of wolf ball, right? The reason why that is really valuable is that he's hitting the ball into those like Man City spaces, right? The penalty box. And he's tending to hit, Finley especially is looking for the ball on the ground there. When we have Rigoni playing this position, he's hitting really dangerous balls in. And they are creating chances, and like that Driussi shot, like that is Driussi underperforming XG, for all the analysts, just so that he can balance out his XG to goals so that they can shut up about it. So a lot of times that's a goal, but in aggregate, like over a whole season, I don't know that we want Rigoni doing that. I think that it's not that we don't want him to ever do it. It's that we need him to start combining with Ring there. And there are so many times in this game where Rigoni just runs right past Ring. He's right there.
Yeah.
He's right there. Just pass it to him. And he just won't do it. So I think that is something that's really important for Rigoni to build on in the offseason. I'm sure it's something Wolf's going to work with him on. And it's part of that Goss theory thing. Like if he can fix that, if he can be a little bit more dynamic and unpredictable in the choices he's making and get in those runs behind the line, he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and it's as much. So even if he is, you say like, oh, he's creating dangerous chances, what does it matter? But he's cutting off other options that like this system is built around having options and creating options. And when he cuts inside, sometimes the space is there and I think it's fine. But other times you're talking about when Ring is in that half space, or if the fullback is pushed up into that space, by cutting inside, he's essentially taking two Austin players out of the play. And if he plays in a great ball and there's options in the box, great. But sometimes there's not. And it ends up just being like an awkward reset with too many players in the same part of the field. So yeah, I think him being able to find, like, recognize those moments and to know when to do one and when to do the other is going to be key for him being a major player in this team.
Yeah,
So,
the goal is the goal is it's volume of high quality chances over time. That's the whole thing. So it's not about whether you create a chance, it's how many high quality chances you create over time. That's the whole point of the system. That's why I get so mad at Mike Lahoud when he's like, just shoot it from distance. That's not what we're trying to do. That's not what the team is built around. Yeah, so hopefully Rigoni learns.
yeah. So, okay. So looking at this performance, is it concerning that Austin seems to be playing with a little bit of a lack of urgency, or do we have faith that they're going to turn it on when it really matters in the playoffs?
I have faith that they're going to turn it on. I'm pretty, like, playoffs are just a different tournament. That's how I think about it. I think you always want to win, right? So you always want to be on a winning streak. It's always better. So I don't want to say like, it doesn't matter that we lost this game. It does matter. But the history of this league in all professional sports, once you get to the playoffs, to a certain extent, the regular season can stop mattering. So yeah, there's reason for concern, but everything that we saw about why we played bad in this game and why we gave up goals was about a lack of intensity. This is a team that throws down at home. This is a team that throws down when it matters. I don't think that's going to happen in the playoffs. Lack of intensity.
I agree. I think there is reason to be concerned with the poor form that they've been in recently, but they have shown up in big games. And so, I don't think it's a reason to panic necessarily, but it is still a little concerning. I was thinking of like what the best result in this last game would be. And given that Maxi Urruti seems to kind of score in bunches, I would really like for Urruti to get 2 goals, for Driussi to get a goal, and for Fagundes and Rigoni both to get assists.
I thought you were going to say goals. Everybody scores.
Just like maximum confidence from the right guys going into the playoffs.
I would say top priority is, I think I would agree, Urruti getting back a scoring form. Driussi, I don't think Driussi is out of form or lacking confidence. I think he is just naturally missed some chances, and he wasn't doing that earlier this season. He just was hitting everything for some reason. That's normal. He's still going to get lots of opportunities, so I'm not too worried about him. But I'd still love for him to kind of start that pendulum swing back. And I don't think it's really high priority because Finley to me is the starter. But if Rigoni gets any kind of goal contribution, I think that would be fantastic.
All right, so looking forward to this Colorado game. So the last time they played, it was July 4th. Austin won 3-2, and this was back in Austin's give up 2, then score 3 period, where we gave up 2 goals, I think, in like the first 20 minutes and then had 2 back by halftime. Urruti has one called back by VAR, probably incorrectly, and then scores again like 2 minutes later for the 3rd goal. And so it was like kind of a wild game. Colorado is now sitting in 10th place. They're already eliminated from the playoffs. Given that scenario with neither team really much to play for, do we see Colorado coming out fighting? Will Austin even come out fighting? Like, what are you expecting from this game?
I think it's a home game. I think Austin is gonna. I don't know fighting, but I think they're gonna play hard. I don't think they're gonna lack the intensity that they did in Vancouver. Colorado, I have no clue what they're gonna do. I think they're gonna lay an egg. It's like what we did last season in against Portland away on the last game. Like it was the last game, right?
Yeah,
against Portland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just we're out. We don't care. We're not a good team. Portland beats us easily. That's kind of my expectation for how Colorado will play.
And there's no like real spoiler role for them to play here either. And so there's not a ton of motivation other than like pride, but that's very often not enough.
Also, they stink on the road this season.
Yeah.
They've got one win on the road all season. I think it's 1-11-4. I was checking before the show. So they don't have good road form, and they're going to play in a pretty tough atmosphere and against a very good team that will be playing for something. So
I think the atmosphere at Q2 will be festive as well. Like I think there will be good energy in the stadium. It's going to be, I guess it's a Sunday I think ACL starts this weekend. I don't think that'll affect attendance a lot. There's so much demand for these tickets. Like, I don't think it's going to matter. And so, but I think people, maybe it won't be the most intense of environments, but I still think it will be a good, fun environment for this team to be playing in. It would be really great if they could just really thump Colorado and just get some good vibes, good momentum, some confidence going into this last game. As far as who starts, I think the biggest question is that right wing spot. Do you want to give Rigoni another chance to take one more step towards being the guy, to fitting in, or do we get more reps with the current most likely starter with Finley?
I don't think Finley needs any more reps. So I think maybe the question is, do you want to just make sure that you thump Colorado, right? So if you do that, then sure, start Finley. At the same time, I mean, I did say over the weekend that like I kind of feel like give every opportunity you can to Rigoni right now. He's getting better every game. And there's no reason at this point, the difference between Finley and Rigoni against Vancouver was not massive. So it's not like we're not going to our offense is going to collapse because Rigoni's out there. I think we can still demolish Colorado. And we could, especially if Rigoni has his first really, really good game, right? So it's possible that our new DP could just go into beast mode and thrash him. So I'm kind of on the side of let Rigoni play more, get him more minutes. It's not going to affect Finley's form. Finley will be ready to start in the playoffs if he gets 30 minutes on Sunday.
Yeah, I could see either way. I don't think I would be upset by either decision. I do think it might make me a little bit nervous if Rigoni comes out and doesn't play well, and then you decide to start Finley in that first playoff game and he hasn't started in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it is. That would make me a little bit nervous. So I think like the safer bet is maybe starting Finley and just accepting the fact that Rigoni is going to have to be super sub this year. But it wouldn't bother me if they tried to give him one more shot to become the guy in this last game. So I really don't know. I think the other question is going to be that right back spot. We were talking about Jimenez and Lima. Like, do you think Jimenez did enough to take over that spot, or do we think we're going to see Lima in this one?
No, I think Jimenez was pretty bad against Vancouver.
Yeah, I thought Lima was good when he came on too.
Yeah,
even creating. I think Lima has like, I don't remember what game it was recently, but he did something. I can't even remember if it was good or bad, but he did like a couple of good or bad things in a row. And it's like, oh, it's going to be this kind of Nick Lima game. And he like seems to like be really good with the ball or really bad with the ball in a given game. And when he came on against Vancouver, I thought he made some really nice moves, some really nice opportunities. Whenever he's on, I think he is our best right back, but he's just not always on.
Yeah, and the issue is that Jimenez, I mean, he looked slow. His decision making was bad. Sure, the whole team was kind of like that, but at this point in the season, like that was the game to give him some more minutes, and now he's the backup right back. And I think we need to get Lima out there and just playing.
Yeah,
Jimenez to me, it's just different than Rigoni, because Rigoni is a guy that can come out and be a difference maker off the bench. And so to me, I just kind of think that any more opportunity to get him minutes to gel with the first team, just do it. Jimenez is not a difference maker off the bench. He's a guy that we'd bring out for different tactical reasons in a playoff game. If we're relying on Jimenez to change the game, I think we're in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I think had he been healthy all season, I think there might have been a bit more of a battle there. But at this point, I think, you stick with Lima and just start him no matter what. All right. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up, Kevin?
I don't think so. Other than the, last regular season game. And I am just so happy to have a professional soccer team in the town I live in. And, I'm 41 years old, and I feel really lucky. So I just want to end on that positive note.
Yeah, I think it's good to just reflect on that every once in a while and just like be grateful that we have a soccer team in our town and they're pretty damn good right now, and that's been a lot of fun. And so let's enjoy it while it's still here, regardless of what the playoffs end up looking like. This has been a lot of fun. So before we wrap up, I'd like to remind you all to rate, review, and subscribe. Tell a friend, especially as they're coming towards the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of people wanting to get into this team who maybe haven't before, maybe paying a little closer attention than have before. Let them know about the show. We'd really appreciate that. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me at LVRHero87. You can find Jeremiah at JBentley_ATX. And you can find Kevin at SoccerAlt. Is that right?
Yes, that is right.
And then we encourage you to sign up for the Patreon. Thanks so much to Patreon folks who been helping us out with questions for interviews. We have a really great interview that we think is going to happen this week and come out on the show next week. We haven't completely locked it in yet, so I don't want to say who it's with, but we will almost certainly be asking for questions on the Patreon. And so that's the kind of stuff that you get access to. And thank you for supporting us. Thank you for giving us great questions to ask these interview guests. If you would like to join that club, you can go find the link in the show notes or at moontowersoccer.com and join. You can also visit the Striker Texas website. Sorry, I keep saying the Striker Texas. It's not the Striker Texas anymore because it's not just Texas. The Striker website, you can get a discount with the code MoonTower22 with a capital M. Kevin, is there any Striker articles that you've read recently that you want to highlight?
I mean, the most recent one that I read today was somebody correcting me on something I said about Rigoni from earlier this season, about how he was scouted by the team, which is that they had their eye on him from the beginning. Which was really interesting. So I think that maybe that's a good reminder of the extent of the reporting that the Striker does on the team.
Is that a Chris Bills joint?
That's a Chris Bills joint, just something that you're like, who could possibly know this? But I can make this assumption, and then the assumption is wrong, and Chris Bills had actually already reported it.
Yeah, there you go. Doing God's work out there, Chris Bills is. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with an episode of Moon Tower Soccer where we will review the Colorado Rapids match. Hopefully have this really exciting interview that we're trying to lock in right now. And then also we'll be previewing our first playoff match. Definitely excited about getting into that. So Can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
And I'm Kevin Morris.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente. Oh my God.